Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Swamp People. We go and look at swamps and bogs around Australia. Swamps may get a bad rep, but we're all about it here at Swamp People, and hopefully you'll see just how much they can teach us about the past and the places where we live. Today, I'm with Ruby, an expert on the Bogong Creek Swamp in the ACT. G'day, I'm Ruby, and in today's episode I'll be taking you through the fire and environmental history of the Namadgi National Park in the ACT. We'll be looking at the Bogong Creek Swamp. A swamp, or bog, is a wetland area, with grasses growing in a muddy environment. The reason swamps are so interesting and important to us is that as time passes, new sediment and material is deposited on top of the existing bog. What this means is that as we dig down, we go back in time. For our investigation, we went out to Bogong Creek and took a core of the swamp material. This is done with a special corer that is pushed deep into the mud, and a core of material is removed. Although a swamp might just look like a pile of mud, it actually preserves vital information about the environment and the surrounding areas. Although a tree itself won't just fall into the swamp and be preserved, many of the pollen grains it produces will find themselves stuck in the mud and preserved in the layers. By counting and identifying the pollen grains from different plant types, we can infer the vegetation growing at different points in time. These things that we use to infer past environments are called proxies. Another proxy we can use to reconstruct the past is charcoal, which tells us information about the fire history of the region. As fire burns through vegetation, it produces charcoal, and some of it is swept into the swamp. For our Bogong Creek investigation, that is exactly what we did. We took samples from varying depths along the core and counted the pollen and charcoal in it. So this is what we found. Our core dates back to the middle of the 1700s. The environment was dominated by native species, such as eucalyptus trees and other native shrubs and herbs. We can see European arrival in the area in the early 1800s, marked by the presence of introduced species, such as the pine tree. Throughout this time, we see frequent fire episodes. This is indicative of Indigenous land management and cultural burning. We see an environmental change starting in the 1840s, with a decrease in eucalyptus and an increase in shrubs and dryland herbs. This includes a lot more introduced species, such as daisies, growing in the area. These changes represent the environmental shift towards farmland and grazing, as European settlement increased in the region. In the charcoal record, we also see this shift. The frequent fire episodes seen throughout the 18th and early 19th centuries cease, and instead we see the suppression of fire. In the 1950s, we see shrubs and dryland herbs down, and an increase in native trees. As we enter the 21st century, we see catastrophic fires in the charcoal record, most notably those of the 2020 Black Summer. These fires were clearly unprecedented, as seen by the massive amount of charcoal in the swamp. So clearly, the area has responded to environmental changes in the past, with changes to vegetation and fire regimes throughout the past 3 centuries. And we know all this thanks to the layers and preservation of the Bogong Creek Swamp. Swamps are awesome! Thanks for watching today's video. Click here to subscribe and click here for more of our amazing videos on swamps.